So our next speaker is Volker Buzek. I hope I'm saying that right. And Volker is a development architect in the SAP mobile and web cosmos. He has a Bible for async code and continuous integration and testing. And he happens to be a diving instructor too. So now he's going to take us on a deep dive into wdi5 for UI5.
Toulouse.
I hope we all take some deep luft. So Volker, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Can you guys see the screen already? I'm not sure whether the setup works on my side.
Yep, it looks good.
Okay, good. So, but I take the opportunity first, and given that it's past 4 o'clock, I officially call the beer time, I'd say.
Thanks, Volker.
So wdi5 for UI5, what is it? I only have a few slides and then we'll jump straight into the code and into the demo part. It's essentially a framework that allows for integration system and scenario tests. If you look at the classical test pyramid here in the slide, double basis of sorts UI5, but you'll see the differences soon. And once you use it, you'll get the hang of what UI5 is not capable of, but wdi5 is capable of. By the way, wdi5 as in not wdi5, because we were so sick of saying W all the time, so we declared wdi5 to be pronounced wdi5. So that's why I say wdi5 all the time. And also up front, wdi5 itself is under a big rehaul in terms of restructuring. So functionality-wise, everything stays the same, but the code layout and everything will be slightly different. First of all, it'll come in 2 flavors. The first flavor is WDIO UI5 service, as you can see here on the slide. And this is going to be an official plugin for Webdriver Io, because all WD or wdi5 is a usage scenario for Webdriver Io in combination with Appium. You'll see that in a second, and the official UI5 record replay API. So as I said, 2 flavors. The first flavor is a regular Webdriver Io plugin for UI5 in general. And the second flavor is going to be wdi5 as it is right now already. So it's the full package that allows for testing hybrid UI5 apps on Android, on iOS, and in or as an Electron app via Appium, using the UI5 test API, and also includes the browser functionality. So WDIO UI5 service, browser scope only. And wdi5 is the hybrid native device part plus the browser part, so the full package. And the reason why we're doing the plugin for Webdriver Io separately, you'll see in a second. And I'll come to the under the hood thing once we're through with the demo part and if there's still time left. So demo part. First, I'll demonstrate the Webdriver Io plugin. So what you see here is the UI5 ecosystem showcase application. So the ecosystem showcase that I launched together with Peter Müßig is just a showcase of the UI5 tooling and includes a small sample UI5 app. Even so, it's pretty basic. It includes everything there is. So there's a list binding here, there's navigation here, there's the usual handlers here, there's the obvious date time picker here, and so on and so forth. It uses the proxy for proxying to certain APIs here of our friend who's running the UI5 latest version API, Ronnie Sletter. Hi, Ronnie. And so yeah, it's running here locally on my machine. So how do I go about installing Webdriver or the Webdriver Io plugin? I prepared something already here in the back. I hope it's big enough for you guys. If not, please intervene. It's just a regular thing as you would do it with Webdriver Io in general. So you would go npm ew dio CLI. I did this already. And then I use the standard wdio config mechanism for launching or for building a configuration file so I can test the UI5 application. It installs certain dependencies in the application. And while it's doing that, I'll use the beer time. And by the way, I think my kids are watching right now since I'm not at home. So I'll take the opportunity and say, hi, kiddos. And so it's built the regular wdio config file. And now once I run this via the suggested thing here, it's going to launch Chrome in the background and going to try and operate the application, which I don't know what happened over here. Oh yeah, it built the regular wdio conf file already. Let me start this again so we can do it from scratch. I'll install the thing again, and then it's going to query me for a certain amount of configuration options. So you can see it from the very beginning. That was too fast. Oh, sorry. So now, this is straight Webdriver Io. It asks you, where is your backend located? It's on my local machine. What framework do you want to use? I'm using Mocha. Do you want to run Webdriver Io synchronous or asynchronously? I'd like to have it run synchronously. Where are my test specs located? It's in web app, test, wdi5, wdi5, wildcard.js. No, we do not want the sample test file that you just saw here. We are not using any transpiling or compiling. We want the regular reporting, and we want it to run with Chrome. The base URL, as you can see here, is localhost 1081. Now again, we're doing the whole install thing. I'm sorry about this, but I want to do it from the very beginning. Your time. Here we are. And now let's run the test suite as it is out of the box, generated by Webdriver Io. So it starts the browser, and of course it fails because there is no plugin for utilizing the UI5 stuff yet. Now, injecting wdi5 in its Webdriver Io incarnation looks like this. I prepared a config file for this. Now let me delete the old one and rename that one. So we can use it. So in the services part, you now denote there's a UI5 service, and after we've officially launched everything and the restructuring is complete, it'll just look like this, UI5. And then there's some wdi5 specific config that is optional. So this is the standard, but I denoted it here so you guys can see it. So there's a screenshot path, the log level for wdi5 itself, the platform. So we're on the browser side of things. As I mentioned, the other scopes come with the full wdi5 package, and the device type is web. Now, if I run the test suite again with this test file, it's now using wdi5. The plugin towards UI5 is in place. It operates the application by itself as you would expect it to do. Here in the background, you can see a log. We'll come to this shortly. And after it's done with the test, it closes the browser and we're good. So how does the test look like for this? So it's pretty basic. We are running, or we're doing a screenshot before we start anything. Then we define a selector for identifying our button, which is this one, the other view button. Then this is the main part of the API. You just tell browser.asControl, the button selector. And for those of you who are familiar with OPA5, this is standard OPA5 selector syntax. As I said, wdi5 reuses the UI5 test API, nothing proprietary, nothing implemented specifically. And then we're firing the press event. We're taking a screenshot again. Then we identify the list on the next view with this ID, and we check that the list is visible. The second test looks pretty similar. We check that there is a binding to the list, so we identify the list again, standard OPA5 selector, browser asControl list, and you can see wdi5 supports method chaining, so we can simply select the list like this, and then issue any kind of API call afterwards. I'll come to that in a second as well. And then we have the list items and can operate on the list items. Now, what's pretty unique, first of all, let's take a look at the screenshots. So we have a screenshot here, and we have a screenshot here from the test we just ran. So as I said before, one of the main advantages of wdi5 is that it basically only, in quotes, glues together certain components. So in this case, as you can see, there is no asynchronous notation of identifying things. And that's because we internally in wdi5 make sure that all promises of every action on the UI resolve before we continue. So if you do browser asControl to identify the button and then fire press, the framework waits until that event is finished and then takes the screenshot. So also from a notation point of view, this is pretty handy because you do not need to care about any asynchronous side effects. You just do your straight down sequential coding. So, and of course, that also allows for breakpoints and debugging capability. Down here, I have a debug terminal launched in Visual Studio Code, and I set a breakpoint, as you just saw here in one of the tests. And if I then just with the standard Webdriver Io command run the whole thing, the application halts at the breakpoint, and I have full control over the full UI5 toolset. So as you can see back here, I already changed the test in the debugger just by the text button, sorry, just by doing this. So I do browser asControl button and I set text. And if you look in the background, oh, the breakpoint is dead already. I'm sorry, we were too slow. So I'll reissue. That's because the default timeout kicked in, the test failed, and so on and so forth. Well, let me do this again. See, it's the command in here that already was issued. So you see hi again changed in real time. Now let me do something again. And you'll see that the whole thing updates in real time. So easy debugging capability as well. And as I just mentioned, the method chaining part, what we did in wdi5, and that's a major step up, I think, from UI5, is once you identify or get a handle on a certain UI5 control via the API browser.s control with your selector, you have the full scope, let's see if we're still fast enough, of methods available here on the control. So the full set of methods from the native UI5 control. So these are all the standard methods that are attached to the SAP M button. Okay. Test continues. And here in the back, you can see it identified each and every list item as a UI5 control, and you could do with the list item whatever you want on the UI5 scope or in the UI5 scope during test time. Now that is the part where you have the Webdriver Io plugin in place to, or wdi5 in its incarnation as the Webdriver Io plugin. And then the full package, wdi5, including the hybrid testing. Here in the back, or what you can see here is the iOS simulator running here locally on my machine. It has a UI5 application packaged and deployed to the device. And the UI5 application is almost the same as the one that you've just seen running in the browser, but it's taken straight from wdi5, because what we're doing, what we're doing in wdi5 is we have a little UI5 application in there, copy pasted from the ecosystem showcase, and we're using this application to test wdi5 with wdi5. So this is wrapped in a Cordova container, essentially has the same functionality as you just seen before, but slightly enhanced and changed. Now, what we want to do is we want to run the same tests both in the browser and on the hybrid device. This is what wdi5 stands for. This is the main feature of wdi5. And in order to do that, you need to configure Webdriver Io to use, as you can see, as you can see on this slide, Appium here. This is the little Appium icon, which is used as the intermediary between Webdriver Io and the native device. And for doing this, you first of all, or we in this case, we split up the config in two parts, so it's easier to reuse things on the native devices. But the main capability, or the main thing that needs to be done here is in the configuration, you tell wdi5 that you're on a native device. And down here, you tell wdi5 that the platform is iOS. Other than that, configuring the output directory for screenshots, configuring Webdriver Io itself essentially is the same. Here are settings that are Appium specific, so on what device you want to run things and so on and so forth. If you look at the test file, it's the same syntax, the same mechanism as before. We're having Mocha as the test runner. And the test itself is pretty simple. We are looking at the title of the application, and it should be sample UI5 application. And down here is similar to what you've seen already. We have a selector, again, standard UI5 selector syntax from OPI5 via the record replay API. This is an optional setting. And then you have the same thing going, browser as control selector. And then again, after that is successfully done, you have any kind of UI5 method on the control available at test time. So how does that look? First of all, I'm starting up Appium in its slightly, let's say, modified version, not modified in itself, but modified how it's called, how it's run. so that it can be the bridge between wdi5/Webdriver Io and the native device. And then you issue the test just as we did in the browser. And in here, I'm using yarn. So the test command is wrapped as a yarn command, and I'm only executing the basic tests for brevity purposes, so it doesn't take so long. Let's look at the simulator in the back, and we can see what happens then. And I'll comment on that. So in wdi, what we do is we install the application per test, and also resetting the device. So what that means is you have a green field in every test execution, and it does that per test suite. So when you have several test files, it'll launch several instances of the test suite. And in these instances, you have the device rebooting and reinstalling the application. So, and this seems to be the demo gods, of course. What's supposed to happen, of course, is the application gets installed. Let's have a look here. Gets launched, and the tests are run. And I think this live demo also highlights a very important fact. Independent of wdi5, setting up tests and test environments on native devices is nothing that's even remotely easy. So not specific to wdi5, but I'd say specific to any kind of native device testing, this always takes effort. And it's not, or it's also slightly error prone. So even though it runs a couple of times in the first place, you're not guaranteed to have it run all the time. That's always the challenge, to actually have the application itself work and the tests work in the native context. So let's see what it's doing down here or up here or in here. So now the bridge application is installed. You could see that. Performance is something for, well, so obviously this doesn't work properly right now. I'll go into the Q&A part first. And while I do this, I'll try and fix the tests here. No, yes, nobody listening anymore.
There's the great comment about your energy drink, Volker. You want to hold that up again? Oh, Münchner Hell. Perfect. A tribute to the Munich crew. You know? Mike Meister is showing us his graphic recording for your talk. That could be interesting to take a look.
Yeah, it's not too much, as it was really a deep dive, but I think I catch some of the ideas, hopefully.
It's not really for the faint of heart, I'll give you that.
The deep dive by the diving instructor. Very cool. And are you teaching your children to code?
Oh, they're still too young.
Ah, okay.
But of course, they got the virus injected, the diving virus, so I expect them to start diving as soon as possible.
Oh, very cool. No, no. I'm putting your Twitter handle in the chat here in a second. So that we can make some noise for you here. And get some shameless mentions of SOT Mukvi, our online track Twitter hashtag. Maybe now there come some questions into the chat.
I see no questions. Tommy, can you see something in the chat or in the Slack channel? Not really. So I also have no really question right now.
Oh, someone does have a question. Do you need an Appian license?
No, you don't. Appium is open source in that regard. We only use the community edition for this year, so no license needed. Now, it's running now. I have no idea why, by the way. I just stopped it and reissued it. You know, magic.
Yeah, magic.
But just for completeness purpose, I'm doing it again. So as you can see, the application gets installed. The device gets reset. So you start from a greenfield approach for every test suite.
Volker, I have a question. Would you describe this as test-driven development? Is this TDD?
Oof, I don't really know about the terminology here. I'd say you could use it for test-driven development, and the main reason why we sort of spread or split the wdi5 package in a Webdriver Io plugin and in the full suite is, as you can see right now in this live demo, the native parts are error-prone, and you know, it annoys the developer majorly if it doesn't work properly during development time, but in the browser it's much more stable. So I'd say, yeah, you could use it for test-driven development, but I would definitely recommend to start in the browser scope, and then once you're sure the tests are actually in place, then you move over to the native/hybrid side.
Maybe that's a good image for the graphic recording, Mike, this idea of a cycle of breaking something and then fixing it and then breaking it again and fixing it again. And is that the concept of TDD?
I mean, I have to say I'm pretty emotional about testing software in general. I try to advocate that for the longest time already, and especially in the UI5 context or in the also mobile context at SAP. Unfortunately, it's not the standard yet. And when our rehaul is done of wdi5, which should be by sometime next week, I hope that we contribute a little bit extra effort into getting testing or into morphing the testing part in the development cycle of SAP UI5 mobile web applications into a standard other than the exception. Now it works, see. Starts the application, runs the test, and closes the application. So this is how it's supposed to work.
Bravo. Wow.
So just in time.
Yeah, really. As the Germans say, a Punktlandung.
Nope.
Very cool. Did someone put another question here in the chat? What have we got here? Now, someone mentioned about teaching children to code. I don't see the name, but recently taken a look into Snap because an open SAP course had it as a prerequisite, and it looks really great as a tool for those starting with with CS. Snap, I mean, yeah, Snap. Ah, cool. And then someone else wrote about a wacky test framework, which needs stopping, starting, waiting. It's good to be on the good old stable backend stuff.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, the whole setup for running native tests independent of wdi5 again is not easy. And that's also the reason why services such as Browser Stack or Sauce Labs are utilized so heavily, because they take away much of that effort. But still, until you use them, you should be able to run the same tests on your local development machine. And for setting this up, as you've just seen in the demo here, you know, it's error prone. That's just in the nature of things. And with wdi5, I hope we can at least ease it somehow, at least once the rehaul of the structure is done and it's more stable. So right now I'm showing the current state of wdi5, by the way. This is not the currently released NPM module. This is what we're doing right now. So hot off the press.
And you're confusing a lot of Americans with this VDI business. But
Yeah,
it is
probably.
a lot easier to pronounce and to say.
Yeah, probably.